I'm responsible for creating the life I want.
If you can't say it in 8 words or less, do not say it until you can speak that clarity.
You do have to change something if you want something to change.
With a bigger smile and a lot more fuck yous. Welcome to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of crass. Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all the other joys of being a queenager. This ain't your grandma's podcast. We're here to chat about our bodies, our passions, our fears, and desires, all while navigating this roller coaster ride of menopause. So grab a glass of wine, water, coffee, whatever, kick back, and let's ride this hot flash wave together. I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable. We're just two outspoken gals who aren't afraid to say it like it is. And without further ado, let's kick off today's episode. Dawn, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
The incredible Amy Chandler is back. Welcome to today's episode. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most transformative and, dare we say, badass periods in a woman's life, menopause and midlife. It doesn't seem so badass at times, and we recognize that, which is why we have Amy Chandler here. Amy is an incredible therapist. She isn't just your average therapist. In fact, if this broad can figure me out, then consider her brilliant. With nearly 2 decades of experience, the University of Denver alumni has built a thriving counseling practice where individuals, couples, families, women, groups break free from victimhood and step into their power. Amy is known as her refreshingly honest, deeply compassionate, and I will emphasize this one, unapologetically bold and honest approach. Amy has helped myself and her thousands of clients redefine their values, align with their truth, and live unapologetically with what she calls fierce acceptance. Amy is a badass mom of 3 super handsome boys, dare I say. And Amy, I wore my shirt for you today, saying, sorry for the great tits and correct opinions, because God knows I've had plenty of correct opinions on your couch, which you have called my bullshit out. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. It's fun to be here.
It's so nice to meet you, Amy.
You too,
we have so much to dive into. One of the first things, and I know Dawn is dying to ask this question because she has been reading this book, but we really wanted to set the stage with this all fours and midlife awakening. So Dawn, why don't you go ahead and dive into this, because I feel like you have a lot more to say and it's on my to-read list for next year.
Oh man. So this book is riveting through the suburban streets of middle-aged women. And it is a book called All Fours, written by, I don't know who the author is at this moment, but it is really a midlife awakening about a 45-year-old woman who feels trapped in the monotony and domestic life of her marriage and being a mother. And it's really created this ripple effect amongst my community, and the New York Times just did a huge article about it. And it's really a story that mirrors the reality for many women during midlife. Women are feeling trapped. They're feeling dismissed. They're trying to really rediscover their identities and setting boundaries and exploring their desires. We are grieving the loss of caregivers for our aging children and really searching for the creative outlets. And so it's an eye-opening statistic, and I think this book really brings it to light, that 60% of divorces are initiated by women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And these, ironically, or perhaps not so ironically, are all throughout the menopause years. Amy and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Amy, how do you see in your practice relationships evolving or even ending during this transformative life stage? And how do you think that women are playing a role in this as they're changing sort of their thought process and really what they want in middle age?
I think we got sold a bill of sales. I think that we thought marriage was going to be something that it's not. I think we thought that kids were going to be something that they're not. I think that we thought it was going to look a lot different. I think we were told it was going to look a lot different. I think we fantasized about it being a lot different. And it is an obligation that does not stop. And I think when you're, 40s and your 50s, it's sort of burnout in a lot of ways. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what it is. And I got 4 more years. I got 10 more years. I got 5, how long am I stuck in this thing and obligated? I think the obligation of it starts to burn you out because you can't really get out of it. We made our choices. We have our kids. We have our mortgage. We have our life. We have this thing set up, and you kind of wake up. And, at least for me, my kids are getting older. So, they're on their way out, and you're like, well, this is what it is. And, you're really in this huge shift and reframing everything that's coming your way. So I really think we're pushed by pain or pulled by vision. And I think it's painful. And then you get vision about what you're going to do next. And that vision, I think, has a lot to do with reframing your values. Actually, maybe for the very first time, this is what I think is really sad. I think for the very first time, you're actually looking at your values from a place of clarity instead of what you think was required of you growing up, getting married, having kids, being a wife, all those definitions that we have of those things. Don't necessarily match who we really are or what we really thought. So I don't know that we actually spend very much time figuring it out until you're pushed by pain, burnout, boredom, irritation, frustration with the obligation of just, running a family, having a marriage. I'm single and I still feel the same way. So I don't really even think it's about a marriage. And in a marriage, I think you've got someone else's dynamic that has to be considered too. They're in the same boat. So you've got 2 people wondering what the fuck we're doing.
What the fuck?
What the fuck? Right? What the
We're
fuck?
wondering what the fuck did we sign up for, and this sucks. And I think if there's any bumps in the road, that's unexpected, like big bumps. Like, this is hard for a year or 2 or 4 or whatever it's going to be. Then we're really caught off guard because it's just not what it was supposed to be. It's not what we thought we signed up for. I think we're maybe for the first time looking at who we really are, what we really ignites us. And it's not always the things we signed up for.
That's so true. I actually had a call with my therapist yesterday, and she was actually talking about values. So it's funny that you said that word, and it resonates with me because a lot of what we're going through is not only this, physical transformation, but it's emotional and existential, right? We're trying to figure out who we are, what we want. We finally have a voice. We're sick of dealing with the bullshit. So not only are these hormonal changes affecting our mood with anxiety and cognitive health, but it's also a stage for reassessing our roles and relationships and friends and priorities, right? Yeah. So, I guess with the impact on these shifts with our hormonal and mental health issues, it's time to really rewrite our own narrative, right? So what are some common emotional struggles that you see in women during this phase of menopause?
And furthermore, what are your recommendations for all of us?
I think people really go back and forth between sort of losing their voice or abusing their voice. It's one or the other. The middle ground gets really overlooked. So we're either shut down or we're going at somebody, right? We're abusing our voice or we're lost our voice. And they kind of dance with each other because the longer you lose the voice, the more you come in full force and abuse your voice. I think that's part of the problem because you can't be heard either way. You really end up sort of coming from a powerless place when you do that. Whether I lose my voice or I abuse my voice, I'm not in my power. I'm not in my authority. I'm in a trauma response, really, at the end of the day. I'm either shut down or I'm aggressive. And so I think it's, I think that's what everyone's trying to figure out is how do I get heard? How do I actually define what my needs are? And what if they don't align with what's going on in my life right now? Like, what if they don't align in the marriage? What if they don't align with where my kids are? Then what? Then I'm just fucked because I'm stuck. I feel shut down in this thing. And so then we go back into this hopeless, what's the point? We'll just keep doing the grind. And that's burnout, I think, at the end of the day. And so I think coming to that place where you figure out what your voice, what does that even mean? What is my voice? That's you getting to your own clarity. And maybe I should not talk as much, like have a conversation with you guys about it. But getting to your own clarity is what I think is the work. I don't think people understand what that means.
Well, Amy, in seeing you for 10, 15 years, both my husband
consistently.
Yeah, it's funny. I would always call Amy and she'd be like, "Are you pregnant again?" Shane and I would reach out and, "Are you pregnant again?" I'm like, oddly enough, yeah. The hormones are going crazy there. But, you have a very powerful piece of advice that you have, always told me, and to find clarity and to really be heard and understood by whoever you're trying to communicate it with. It's, if you can't say it in 8 words or less, then do not say it until you can speak that clarity. And I've tried so hard to do that in my professional relationships, personal relationships, marriage, children, because I think that we as women have the tenacity, or excuse me, we as women have the habit of really blabbing on and on and on and on. And so much of that blabber is lost. So unless you can say things in 8 words or less, don't say it at all. And that's really finding clarity.
Yeah. And I don't think if you can't say it in 8 words or less, you don't actually know what you need. So I can process things out loud for hours. That has nothing to do with clarity. That has to do with me trying to process something to get to a place of clarity. So until I get there, I really don't address it. It's premature to have a conversation with anybody if you don't know what you need from the conversation and you don't know you're part of the problem in the conflict. If you don't know those two things, you have no business talking to anybody. And that takes time, right? Like that could take a day, that could take 5 minutes, it could take 5 weeks, it could take, and I don't, one of the other things I say is do nothing out of fear and anger, because that's really your voice shutting down or you abusing your voice. So if you're going to behave out of fear and anger, you are out of line. Until you get to clarity, you are not coming from your adult place, your current age. Otherwise, you're coming from, I call them temper tantrums. You're just having a temper tantrum. You're just kicking and screaming, and you don't even really have clarity about what it is that you're asking for.
Did you give John any suggestions of how to find clarity, right? So how do you narrow down all the noise in your head to like a specific 8-word phrase that really encompasses how you're feeling without being blah, 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 blah?
I just could go on and on. When people are triggered, that's not enough. People actually don't know what got triggered. The event is not the trigger. The belief system that it triggers is the issue to talk about. So if someone cuts me off on the road, that can trigger me, but what it really triggers is I feel disrespect. It could be other ones. But as an example, I feel disrespected would be the belief system that got triggered. Now I can start focusing on that belief system that I feel disrespected when I'm driving. I mean, then there's a process around that. Like, let's figure out what actually got triggered, because the event, the person is not actually the trigger. What they're triggering is what you have to figure out. And I think that's the work, right? And most people people go to therapy to talk about the behaviors. They don't go to therapy to talk about what actually needs to be healed. Like that's the learning in therapy, is all that stuff you're going to tell me for 45 minutes isn't the problem. The problem is in what it ignites in you. My abandonment, I feel disrespected. No one listens to me. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like, I can't ever get it right. Doesn't matter how much, I show up, I'm not enough. That's where the healing is. And until you change that, you're just going to switch behaviors. The rest of it is just noise. And so I think crawling through the noise to get to what's actually been triggered is always going to be your unresolved issue. And it's not somebody else's job to fix it.
And Amy, you're so brilliant. What I most respect about you, I respect so many things about you, but where you're so brilliant is getting to the deep-rooted issue very quickly and giving solutions to solve that issue. And in my experience with Amy, and in her practice, where she focuses on is so many of us, including myself, are living in that victim cycle, right? We've told ourselves stories of why we're the victim for 45 plus years. And that's interestingly where we feel safe, right? In that core belief system. And until you can change that story and transfer that from the victim cycle into the accountability cycle, that's where the work and that's where the progress happens. And it's really difficult to do so because when you've been telling yourself the same story for 46 years that's been downloaded for your core belief system, how in the fuck are you supposed to change that after feeling safe in that space for so long? But you do a really beautiful job of helping your clients acknowledge what that story is, where your core belief system is, what's happening in that cycle, and then shifting over to the accountability cycle. So it's a very, very effective form of therapy. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Because I think that you're just brilliant in what you've created. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a girls' boozy brunch or, been at a tennis match and sort of pulling out a napkin and drawing the victim cycle and the accountability cycle. And it blows people's minds.
It wasn't that long ago, maybe 6 months ago, I was writing or doing something and I was like, boy, this victim cycle is actually, because everyone's saying everyone's a victim or everyone's a narcissist, right? Those are the two hot words. Everyone's a narcissist and I'm the victim of the narcissist. Well, that victim cycle is how a narcissist acts. There's no empathy, there's no accountability, and it's me, 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 me. You did this to me, 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 me. That's what the victim cycle is I have no responsibility in this problem. So the big shift is I am not the victim of the day, the husband, the kids, the life, the house, the mortgage, the politics, whatever. I am accountable for what I'm accountable for, and you can change your life from accountability. You can change nothing from being the victim. And that goes across, dare I say it out loud, that goes across even through domestic violence. And you have to see your role in the relationship to change, to get out, to do what you need to do. We are both the victim and the perpetrator. We play both roles. I do, you do, Courtney does. Don't know you, Courtney, but you do. All of us
Damn it,
do that.
You got me already.
And so you cannot just address somebody as a perpetrator and you cannot just address somebody as a victim. You actually have to address both parts of both people. So perpetrators have a victimization side and victims also perpetrate on people. And this is not, I know I use the word domestic violence, but you don't have to have domestic violence in your life. We're all doing it. I am accountable. And until I see that, I don't have anything to change. So if I don't have accountability, I'm actually very disabled, disempowered, and unable to do anything about my life because now it's dependent on what someone else does instead of what I can do. So talk about throwing away your power. I'm the victim and you did this to me, you did this to me, you did this to me. You have just thrown away all your power, all your authority, and now it's dependent on what somebody else does or doesn't do. And the word that comes, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. That's throwing away your power until someone else does what you need them to do instead of, I really need to look at what I'm doing, my participation in this, or why I'm attracted to a narcissist, or why I'm involved in a relationship I don't want to, or why I have burnout in the first place.
And don't be fooled, people. Amy will call you out on your bullshit. We've had many of tough conversations on her couch, which have been, a big slice of humble pie in Amy calling me out. And it's humbling and it's empowering. And it really has you take a pause to be like, holy shit.
I think, what you've kind of been talking about too is really from surviving, right, to thriving, right? So now we've been dealing with this bullshit. You're in a role to help people kind of see clearly, find their clarity, and process to thriving. So with midlife, it can be obviously a time of reckoning, understanding, regrowth, rebirth. It's a time to address those childhood traumas, societal expectations, internalized beliefs. It's more about shifting from how do I survive this to really how do I thrive in this? So rewriting your own story, setting boundaries is obviously huge. That's what I've been working on because I say yes to everybody, and healing from anything in the past. So with that said, many women still feel stuck, right, in the survival mode. How can I get out of this cage of doing chores and doing this and doing that and doing that to, expanding to what we really want to do. So how do you help them recognize and shift this mindset?
And call them out on their stuff.
Bullshit.
Most people, which is really interesting because it's men and women. Women, they always say yes, they're pleasers, they got a lot of perfectionism, all those things. And really a pleaser, the yes person, is really the inability to hold other people accountable. It has nothing to do with I'm nice or I can't hold other people accountable. So I'm covering up, or I'm taking over, or I'm plugging the holes for somebody else, but that's a role you learned growing up. That's not just something you do. That's some kind of downloads you have or requirement you have that you have to make everybody else okay. So that's codependency and all those things, right? But it gets real. Boundaries are how you protect and respect yourself. That's all they are. Not you have to protect and respect me. I have to protect and respect me. And that's how you get to a lot of clarity. How do I protect myself emotionally, physically, sexually? When your body is changing and the hormones are changing, what you need to do boundary wise may be very different, because your needs are different, your expectations are different, sexuality changes, your hormones. Like, what do I need to do to protect and respect myself so I don't abuse other people, so I don't take it out on other people or lose my voice, right? So I'm not screaming and hollering at everyone else, or I just shut down. Like, both of those are very traumatic responses or old responses. And so what do I need? What is changing in my life? How is my body changing? How is my sexuality changing? Like, those are not little questions. Those are big questions. That's a lot of like thinking about what's really shifted and changed. And do I have the courage to say it out loud, know what I need, ask for what I need, and then get what I need? Like, that's my responsibility. And I think we feel like it's somebody else's responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility. So boundaries are how you protect and respect yourself, not how you protect or respect me.
Yeah, going back to that All Fours book, it's really interesting because this character in the book, who is in the throes of her midlife, experiencing menopause, has felt very sort of dead inside in the life that she has created and or signed up for, right? She feels dead sexually, she feels dead from a creativity standpoint, from a, she just is lacking sort of that feeling of being alive, right? And so she's in search of, ways to feel more alive sexually and, expanding in relationships outside of her marriage, both from a heterosexual and a homosexual standpoint. And I feel like, women are just feeling trapped. And for the first time in their lives, they're setting those boundaries for themselves out of respect and really reevaluating those types of things in their lives, which is why this book has created such a huge following. Middle age, I mean, is there anything that you can speak to on that?
I mean, I don't think women know who they are sexually. And I think to go outside of the lines that you were given is a huge challenge. Like, just figuring out who you are actually sexually, not what religion told you, not what your parents told you, not what some culture told you, not what, pattern you and your partner have gotten into. Like, who am I really sexually? And when I go outside of what I thought I was, now do I have the courage to talk about it, ask for it, be out in the world, explore it? And I guess I got to say, I don't think people know themselves on a deep level in a lot of areas, but definitely sexually, it's very, I mean, the doors are opening some, but to even be able to have a conversation with the person in your life about, like, I really enjoy this and not that, like, that's hard to do, period. Much less if you actually explore things and find out that everything you thought you liked or didn't like hasn't been true the whole time. Like, I've got a whole nother set of like things that I'm curious about. So that takes vulnerability. It takes two people to be vulnerable, and it takes a lot of non-judgment. Like, can we just talk about who we are? And over and over and over in relationships, people don't listen. They weaponize conversations. And so there is, across the board, are you going to just hear me or are you going to judge me? Because they're two very, very different things, right? So I don't know that we know who we are sexually. And it's not someone else's job to figure it out. It's my job to figure that out. I don't know if people really understand who they are. I think we have become who we were thought we were supposed to be. And now we're in conflict with that because it's not who I think I am.
This is such an interesting and bumpy time in life. And when I speak to so many of my girlfriends, a lot of us are being presented with these unresolved childhood traumas, right? And experiences. And it's happening now. It's happening at midlife. Why do you think, Amy, that our childhood traumas are opening Pandora's box at this time in our life when there's so much other uncertainty and hormonal shifting going on? And, how do we as women address those deep-rooted childhood traumas that are presenting themselves?
I think that all of our hiding places go away or they don't work anymore, right? Like the kids are a hiding place, work is a hiding place, even conflict in a marriage can be a hiding place. Like they're really good ways to not actually address yourself, right? I'm too busy, I don't have the time. And I think we're pushed by pain or pulled by vision. So when there's a lot of change in your life, you have an opportunity, and I mean that word. It is an opportunity to look at what's going on. It is not a anti-me thing going on. It's an opportunity for me to figure out what is out of alignment with myself. So I think your world, well, when kids are leaving, your noise level goes way down, right? If the marriage breaks up and there's a divorce, after the divorce, the noise goes way down because whatever you think the problems were in the divorce actually don't get fixed because you got a divorce. Now you're just figuring out the same things going on outside of your marriage. So now it's you, right? The places that we hide and the places that we blame start to change. If anybody's been in therapy, when I was in therapy, when I realized I was the common denominator, that was a big day. I'm the common denominator. I'm the issue. It's my shit. It's not someone else. But that's bullshit. Like that's a big fucking ripoff because I came to therapy to get somebody else in line. I didn't go to therapy to get me in line. Right? I was going to go fix everyone else. I didn't think it was me. I was like, who the fuck does this therapist think she is telling me I'm the common denominator? The day I realized my accountability and the things that were going on in my life was a terrible day and probably the most powerful day. And I got that somewhere in my 20s. And I was like, oh, shit, this is bad news. And this is really, really good news because that means I'm in control of what I do from here on out. Right. But it's a gut wrenching thing when you realize it's your shit, your stuff, your trauma, your history, your patterns, your belief systems that are causing you problems.
That's super powerful. And now I'm also guessing like, fuck, I have everything to do with this because all I want to do is point fingers too. Like you're the problem. You're the problem. I think, a lot of us really have in past lives had a hard time of whatever that word is, whatever, that word is, looking inside and really like pointing fingers. But it's also about, not compromising yourself and respecting yourself and clearing out all that noise, as you said, which I agree with you. There's so much. And I love that analogy of, if you get a divorce because things aren't working, you still have like all of that still with you and you haven't really processed it. So how can women embrace and change this mindset to really like look inside, introspect? I can't even say, can somebody say that word, introspectively? Do you know what word I'm saying?
I don't.
Introspectively.
Introspectively. Yeah. More coffee, please.
You even have your smart glasses on. I mean, those
I know, I do. I can't. It's like the one word that's not coming to me this morning. People are laughing at me everywhere around the world.
Because you had too much tequila at Casa Bonita last night.
I did have too much tequila and shitty tequila too. But yeah, how can we look inside and look at like how we say these things to ourselves to not really move forward, right? So how do we compromise and not respect, and how can we move forward and change the mindset that, yeah, we might have some fault in this, and like, let's go through that.
Go sit on Amy's couch or get on a Zoom meeting with her, and you too can experience, like me many years ago, that saddest, most powerful, humbling experience of your life.
Yeah, you two will be drawing on cocktail napkins, friends.
I'm telling you, that circle, just knowing the circle can change your life. And I'm not being like, when you were talking, I was like, well, I really did create a formula. It's hopefully going to get patented. Like, there's a way to figure out your stuff, but you have to be, well, I don't know that most people come to therapy to figure out their stuff. I think they come to therapy to change somebody else, right? But when you shift that over, or you're willing to like look at your own pain, right? Look at your own discomfort, look at, like, because you don't go to therapy because you're doing well. You go to therapy because you are being pushed by pain, or you're out of alignment with yourself, or you don't know what you're doing next. That's what draws people to counseling, is crisis in their life. For marriage is in trouble, I'm in trouble, kids are leaving, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. You're not coming to therapy to talk to me about what's working in your life. You're coming to therapy to tell me what's not working in your life. And so I'm not being self-promoting when I say this, but you can go to therapy for a really long time and never figure out that it's you. I think I got really bored as a therapist, and I was like, I can't sit in this room and listen to the bullshit coming out of everyone's mouth. And I just got to tell you it's you, and let me show you how it's you. So can we get there? Can we start from there and not start, 3 years from now? And so I think there are other therapists that can do it too. I'm not saying that all therapy does that, but I don't want to sit in a room as a therapist with somebody else enabling them as being powerless, or that they have no culpability in their life, right? And so my big thing is I'm going to get you to accountability as fast as I can, mostly because then you can change your life. Then I can support you that way. I can't enable you by listening to you complain and whine and sit in your diagnosis. I'm big on detaching you from your issues, not attaching you to your issues. So I don't know that I even answered your question, except for that you have to have courage, or something has to ignite you to go say, I want something to change.
Yeah.
And that could be a book, it could be therapy, it could be, some big shift in your life, but you do have to change something if you want something to change. You can't wait for everyone else to get in line with what you think they should be doing.
Well, it's so interesting. And this actually leads into the next segment of our podcast, because so many women are feeling lost and hopeless, and that their life is over in midlife, right? They felt so dismissed, and they feel so out of body, as if who they really are, and are searching for that next version of themselves. Where in actuality, we're in a very cool time in our lives, and there's an opportunity to really thrive in this midlife that we're calling it. This is our time to thrive and live with fierce acceptance, and to love ourselves unapologetically. I think if we flip the script and say midlife isn't an end, but it's a beginning, and start to do a lot of that work for ourselves, I think that we can completely transform this next phase of our life. So with that being said, Amy, how can women really embrace this? We've talked a lot about building a contract with ourselves to ensure that I am living authentically. What advice do you have for women stepping into this power and this contract with themselves during this challenging yet really cool period of life?
Well, let me back up a second. The way we frame menopause is a belief system. When you just said that, Dawn, I was like, I don't have any of those thoughts about my age. Like, I'm turning 60, right, this year. Not one day was I dreading any shift in my life. So I think how I got downloaded, or I think everyone's got to really take a look at how they downloaded getting older, downloaded their role, downloaded menopause, like what messages they had, what that whole experience has been like in their life, because not everybody dreads it, right? Or even experiences a lot of that's not everybody's experience. It's some people's experience. But even that is a way that it's framed. I'm losing something. And I guess when you said it, I was not super triggered, but I was like, I never thought I was losing something. I thought I was gaining something and moving on to the next thing, right? I'm going forward, excited about what it looks like when, I'm getting around close to like all the kids being gone, and opportunity in front of me. One of them's 17, so I've got a couple of years, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to get this stuff on paper. I'm going to do stuff before I hit a crisis and there's no kids at my home. I can predict that. So we can all predict what's going to come around the corner. Quite a bit of it still comes down to I'm responsible for creating the life I want. I get to rewrite the contract. I get to take a look at whether I play small or I play big, whether I respect myself or disrespect myself. Like, that's on me, but that's still that in your face accountability. Like, you have to own what you're doing. If I'm going to disrespect myself, I can't be complaining about it. I'm doing it.
Well, amen to you, Amy. If only other women could embrace that mentality and that shift, but that just proves that you've really invested to do the work to embrace this transformative time in our lives.
Everyone can do that. Even if I have to deal with something, I have to adapt. I can't just fight the whole thing the whole time. You just keep getting older. You just keep going through changes. And this isn't a negative change. Like, we were doing it when we got married, when we had kids, when we got out of college. Like, they're all transitions in our life. And somewhere, if you got the message that this was a crappy transition, you're going to have a crappy transition because it's how you perceive it's going to happen. Right?
I feel like that's so true. It's like mindset, people like who go into, for me, if you have cancer and you go into it like negatively, then you're going to have a negative outcome, right? So it's all about positivity and being open, and shifting the mindset is a huge thing. So,
and fun fact, ladies, 100% of us are going to go through this fucking thing called menopause. So buckle up, you can either ride the wave or you can resist the wave. And let's ride it. Let's ride it together.
Positive things to going through menopause?
Are there positive ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in my experience, it's sort of a reawakening. It's a time of self-evaluation and really figuring out what's important to me in this next phase of my life, setting those new contracts with myself, as to what my expectations are, not only for myself, but for the people who I'm surrounded with, my husband, my friends. I think that, in this middle age, as I talk to so many people in our community and amongst friends, I think women are sick of the bullshit. And so they're really eliminating a lot of toxic relationships, negativity, that sort of thing in your life. So I think that, that can be really positive in moving forward.
I think people learning how to say no, which makes you happier, right?
Yeah.
Where I really don't want to do something I resent, so I'm not going to do it. I think people actually get more permission to say no in their life. I don't really want to keep doing what I'm doing. I don't really love when I sit with this particular person. It drains me. It doesn't ignite me. And so if you've got clarity about that, then you know what to do. Are these people respectful or disrespectful in my life? And if they're not, you don't need conversations with them. You need to just change who you have lunch with. That's,
as my good friend Amy Mason says, if it's not a fuck yes, it is a fuck no.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I totally agree with Dawn. Like, this is a time where we don't give as much fucks about, oh my God, I'm not going to fit in. Like, what are the neighbors doing? I need to do this. I need to have everybody like me. So it is really a time of no's. And I've gone through that personally, where I'm like, okay, to your point, Dawn, these people have been in my life, but are they really fulfilling me? And are they giving me something back that I need? I don't want to be around energy vampires. I want to be around people who inspire me and lift me up. And that's in all aspects of my life. I always look at it like midlife crisis for women, but I think it's just a midlife reset, right? Where we're like, we have the permission to say no and say yes to things that make us feel good, and really take the time to go within. I've been to therapy off and on all my life too. And when I was a teenager, it was different than when I was in my 20s and my 30s. Right. And now that I'm, nearing towards 50, it looks a lot different, right? And I agree with you, Amy, that a lot of us have to think and take some accountability for like what we're doing in order to actually change that and understand it and move forward with a bigger smile and a lot more fuck yous.
Amen to that, woman. Well, Amy, this isn't the last time you will be on the Hot Flash Health podcast. You are brilliant. You're inspiring. You have an approach to therapy and midlife that is so unique and so beneficial to so many of us, sort of searching for clarity, right? And trying to embrace this next stage of our life. I have been a huge proponent of many of your programs. I have been a participant in many of your programs, from individual therapy to couples therapy to group therapy to your 6-week boot camps. Tell our listeners, because you don't just have to be in Denver. You take clients from all over the country, all over the world. You have fascinating programs that you offer. Tell our listeners how people can get more Amy Chandler in their life, because God knows we all need it.
Thanks, Dawn. The website is justamy.com. There is a course called Jumpstart that is a 6-week course that gets you through that cycle we're talking about and the contract we're talking about. Gets you to accountability, probably the first session. So cut through all that. There's a program called Deep Dive, which is for executives and how this all shows up at work. And there's a program called Under the Surface for the employees about how you go and sabotage these roles show up at work and what you could do to be happier at work and in your authority in general. So really all of the courses are about how you get back into your authority, which is huge. Like it's a huge shift in everybody's life. There's private counseling. So Just Amy does the courses, but the therapy is through Integrity, and it's private and couples and families. Families could take the course and all your kids know it, you know it, your husband knows it, everyone knows it. And now everyone can call each other out on their temper tantrums, their lack of accountability. So justamy.org is where the classes are. I'd love to just talk with anybody who wanted to ask more questions, and they can reach me on my cell phone, which I'm happy to give out. It's the only way I really communicate is through that phone and through justamy.org.
I think it's interesting, worth pointing out, Amy, for many of us with young children, are familiar with the Love and Logic course. And Amy was a facilitator in that for a long time. And Amy is really passionate and interested in, as our children are growing, because so many of us have sort of those teenage to older children, in figuring out their archetypes, right? And how they're presenting themselves in our households. Really quickly, Amy, because I think that's an important thing to note in this podcast. Can you speak to that at all? Because so many of us, including myself, are trying to navigate around these personality types of our children and how to find what motivates them and try to minimize how much we're fucking them up.
So if you know about Love and Logic, every single person should understand Love and Logic. It is a formula outside of codependency. Everyone should understand Love and Logic. I want my kids, so we all have these roles that we play, like from perfectionist to scapegoat to lost child to the mascot to, all these different, the pleaser, all those roles. There are parts of those roles that are really positive and that will push you forward and really support you in your life. The parts of them that are negative, that self-sabotage you, that is what I want to eliminate. I want my kids to have awareness around that. Like, being sarcastic is fun. Being sarcastic can also sabotage you. Being a perfectionist and needing straight A's and really being motivated that way can be really great. It's also going to give you a lot of anxiety. Like, how do you balance it out so the negative parts of those personalities that we all have we have more control over, because they're actually your original coping skills. And if you learn really unhealthy coping skills as a kid, they're going to be the ones you're talking about in therapy at 40 and 50 and fighting with your partners with later. Period. That's where they're coming from. Attitude, gratitude, respect, and no secrets was the family rule. And whenever there's discord in my family, it is because all of our attitudes, our gratitude, and our level of respect is out of alignment with each other. Like, it's a pretty easy formula to get back to, like, well, what would it look like if I respected my kids today? What would it look like if my kid respected their brother today? Like, it's pretty easy to figure it out. It's very clear. There's a lot of clarity in just those 3 words: attitude, gratitude, and respect. And so unconsciously, not super directly, I really did raise my kids with a lot of this stuff. And now they're 17, 22, 21 almost. And I hear the language coming out of their mouth. They do it better than I do. They're more mature in a conflict than I am. They're like, well, you're the one who had the temper tantrum. I didn't. So you let me know when you're ready to talk, Mom, because that wasn't okay. Or what's your 100%? Or you're such a hypocrite because, now it's coming at me. And I got to tell you, one, it's great because I've got 3 little me's attacking me, which is good. But also that they got the language, they got the process, and they will use it in their life. They have no other expectation other than accountability, respect. Like, they know what all that stuff means. And so I'm hoping that really serves them in their life going forward. But they sort of were brought up with it. But Love and Logic had a lot to do with that too, because it's a similar formula.
It's probably a little more productive and healthy than threatening my eldest child, who wouldn't change into a collared shirt for picture day, that I would draw a penis on his forehead.
Not.
I'll make sure and put some money aside, Aim, so my kiddos can see you.
Yeah, it's too late for me. I've already fucked mine up, so.
Mine too. Like, they get to all go through their own stuff, right? But they have better tools.
Well, I'm so excited I'm excited to work with you. I love all of these classes you're offering, and your knowledge is just amazing and incredible. And Dawn, thanks for having Amy on the podcast today. As we said, we will definitely have you back, but let's wrap today's episode. And all of us just remember that menopause may be a wild ride, but together we've got this. So don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook at Hot Flash Health, and stream and subscribe to us on any of your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Share your thoughts with us anytime, and we love hearing from you. And until next time, stay sassy, stay fabulous, and keep those hot flashes in check. Bye.
Thank